The whole nation was being hoodwinked by the media, by BJP, its media partners, and pollsters and experts who were actually peddling lies to the country. Conceit and hubris hasn't left the BJP yet. They still believe they can put out any narrative and they expect everyone to buy that. So, what is the latest narrative? Oh my God, third term, we've got more than 200 seats. Congress doesn't even have 100 seats. Isn't that a victory?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. For all practical purposes, it is the victory of this new team, which has almost defeated what would be the world champion.
Hi everyone, we have Mr. Yogendra Yadav with us. He is a psephologist turned politician, political activist, academic. He's wears many hats. He's a political scientist as well. He was one of the people who had called the election. He'd stuck his neck out this time, saying that if he got it wrong, he would sort of give up predicting and all kinds of things. That he did not have to, luckily for many of us, and we still have his insight. So, one of the ways, one of the things you said recently in an interview, this is a victory of Lok over Tantra, that it was a seemingly unlevel playing field. There was many things that we've gone over that. Arrest of chief ministers, ED, CBI, even the election commission at times has been accused of being partisan, although they've seized many things, they've acquitted themselves very well now. How do you place the numbers in that context? What is the significance of the verdict and the numbers the opposition has and the National Democratic Alliance has in the context of the run up to the election?
Thanks, Akash. Thanks for remembering the forecasting. I must say honestly that to my mind, that's not the most important thing. In any case, am not a apologist. I don't want to continue doing that. I had to do it just out of sheer compulsion because I really thought that the whole nation was being hoodwinked by the media, by BJP, its media partners, and pollsters and experts who were actually peddling lies to the country. So I was left with no option but to recover a bit of my earlier self and actually come out and place what I thought was the truth, which has turned out to be true. That the numbers which I put out happen to be almost close to reality. That's a bit of a fluke. I mean, I shouldn't make too much of it. And I can tell you, I have absolutely no desire to continue. So I really hope we would not be in a situation where media and pollsters don't do their job and a political activist has to come and do the job. That's
Right.
really a sad commentary on the state of politics.
Right.
On the larger point that you've made, and that's the real point, how do we interpret this mandate? You people can look up the numbers, and I've since last 24 hours, now the narrative has come up once again. And the interesting thing is that the conceit and hubris hasn't left the BJP yet. They still believe they can put out any narrative and they expect everyone to buy that. So, what is the latest narrative? Oh my God, third term, we've got more
Yeah.
than 200 seats. Congress doesn't even have 100 seats. Isn't that a victory?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous for two or three reasons. Just imagine, Akash, we are beginning T20 World Cup. And now the US has a cricket team for the first time, which is a great idea.
Yeah.
They played a very nice first match. I really look forward to that. Now, suppose Indian cricket team was to have a match with US cricket team. I hope they would. And in the 20th over, Indian cricket team manages to defeat them by 2 wickets. What would be the news on your sports page? Would you say India's victory? Or would you say, well,
Well,
they
yeah.
managed to, yeah, just imagine what the
Yeah.
headline should be. And if someone were to come with this headline, India scores a great victory, what would you say? Please go back and learn reporting.
Yeah.
थोड़ा पानी पी लो यार, थोड़ा सा क्यों excited हो रहे हो? देखो क्या हुआ है. For all practical purposes, it is the victory of this new team, which has almost defeated what would be the world champion. Now, the election this time was practically that kind of an election. And I'm not speaking of political strength or weaknesses. Let's simply look at externalities. One is money. What do you think would be the proportion between the BJP and the opposition in terms of money power they could deploy? No one has the final answer, but if you look at the advertisement money, for which we have some answer, this is white money being spent on social media advertisements. BJP was ahead of the opponents by probably 1:50. In some cases, 1:100. That is the kind of thing we are looking at. What it would be in terms of black money, you can imagine. So there's infinite money on the one hand, and the leading opposition party cannot even use its own bank account. Look at media. Mainstream media, with some honorable exception, has been utterly, utterly shameful in this election. The only thing they have done is to peddle lies on behalf of the regime. They have acted as spokespersons of the ruling party. And in a situation where instead of asking questions, instead of holding power to account, they were holding opposition to account on flimsy charges. This never happens anywhere in the world. So entire media being lined up. And if social media has some protest, social media was being bought with advertisements and so on. So media power, completely infinite power versus minuscule power of the opposition. In terms of institutional power, administration, police, ED, IT. What happened in Surat and Indore is brazen stuff that happens only in Sarpanch election, in some back of the beyond place. You don't see that in parliamentary elections. This is happening. And finally, the conduct of the election commission. I know you were very careful as a journalist, which is how one should be. Occasionally, they have been accused and so on. Look, let's face it. Election commission conduct has been disgraceful. I am someone who used to be an ambassador for the election commission. When the Election Commission of India held its 50th anniversary during Mr. Vajpayee's regime, they had invited me to explain to 100 election commissioners from all over the world what a glorious job Election Commission of India does. And therefore, as a former ambassador, I think I have the moral authority to say that the three gentlemen, I have to call them gentlemen, who are in the Election Commission of India today, they have brought this institution to ruin. They have disgraced themselves. They have disgraced this institution by what they have done and what they have not done. The Prime Minister of the country says things which are not only against the model code of conduct. This is plain straight criminal, not allowed under the criminal law of this country. He gets away by doing that. In that situation, if you look at the elections now, and this is the context in which you look at the election. So we are not looking at normal elections. We are not comparing it to the third term of some president in Latin America or someone in the UK. Please, for heaven's sake, come to India. Look at the reality. This is what the context of this election was. And do not forget 400 Par. 400 Par is not a false narrative floated by some BJP opponent in order to bring them down later. This is a claim made by the rulers themselves, parroted by the entire media, supported by all the opinion polls. I'm less worried about exit polls. Exit polls are, in the last instance, pretty harmless affair. I'm more worried about the opinion polls that came before elections. And the entire reporting during the election, which made everyone believe कि आएगा तो मोदी.
Right.
In that context, if the party which told you till day before yesterday, literally till the day before yesterday, you were being told 400 Par, 401. Right. If they are down to 290, if someone who told you till day before yesterday that he was going to better his best record is not even getting a majority of seats, is that a victory or defeat? I mean, this is elementary political logic. How can this narrative be peddled the way it is being peddled right now? I'm astonished and truly ashamed when I see these things being parroted on television, right, that this kind of stuff can be said with straight face. I really, really hope that in the coming few days, we would see better from mainstream media.
So, one of the things that, Professor Palchikar, Suhas Palchikar, he wrote for the Indian Express on the day of the election, and it was in print the day after, online. there are two ways of looking at how the BJP will act with this mandate now. One is that there is a compulsion of coalition politics. Now they're dependent on at least two allies, if not more, going forward to even keep the NDA together. And that will have a tempering effect, as it has in the past, certainly during Mr. Vajpayee's tenure, on any coalition government. The other is, Mr. Palchikar believes, and many people do you think that the Modi Shah BJP, which is a very unique creature in that sense that we've seen in the last 10 years, the Modi Shah BJP, which has only been a majority party, both in Gujarat when they were in Gujarat together and now at the center, do you think that there's some apprehension that they will in fact that the government might be as harsh well, what its critics call harsh and overbearing? Uh, because they're up against a corner and you have state elections coming up, big ones at the end of the year and then going forward, that in fact, rather than opening up, it may in the short term at least lead to uh, a more contentious political atmosphere led by the state
Not to
government.
put too fine a point on it and not to go through the diplomatics. Basically, the two top people in this country, Mr. Shah and Mr. Modi, are not used to democracy. They're not used to democracy outside their party. They're not used to democracy within their party. And for the first time, they may have to now be constrained by democratic constraints, which Atal Bihari Vajpayee was quite used to. These two gentlemen are not used to that. So there are two possibilities. One, that they learn to deal with the fact that this is not a BJP government, but an NDA government. That they learn to deal with the situation that TDP, a prominent South Indian party, is stepping in and would not allow this North-South divide kind of stuff, may not allow the delimitation issues that may come up. And the fact that both TDP and JDU have substantial interests in Muslim vote, and they would not therefore wish to allow brazen anti-Muslim, the Hindu-Muslim narrative, brazen stuff to reduce Muslims to the stage of second-rate citizenship. So when they may learn to accommodate, one should hope that in democracy, break is always a very, very great idea because the vehicle that's being driven recklessly down the hill, a vehicle in which all of us are sitting, 140 crore people are sitting in that vehicle. If that vehicle acquires some brake, it can only be a welcome idea. However, you have to think about the other possibility, the possibility that those who are not used to democratic constraints and those who are used to the fact that everything and everyone can be managed. See, this conceit and this hubris brings every undemocratic ruler down in the last instance. They somehow come to believe that everything can be managed. You can tell people that they'll get 15 lakh rupees in their account and then no one would ask you. You can say, बस 50 दिन दे दो मुझे, उसके बाद खंबे से लटका. And no one would then go out looking for pillars. You can say that farmers' income would be doubled. And then not even give an iota of data about what happened to that. Once you get used to all this, you get used to the servility of media, you get used to lack of accountability. Then, if you face some constraints, your first impulse would be to find a way to short fuse that. And or sometimes to go on a more confrontational path.
Yeah.
Which is a possibility you cannot rule out. And if that happens, we are in for more difficult times. Otherwise, by and large, my sense was what Professor Palshikar says, what Pratap Mehta also says on Indian Express edit page, that it's opening up of democratic spaces. Yeah. Yeah. It is opening up of contestations, which is such a good idea. Contestations within the parliament, contestation outside the parliament, opposition finding some more voices. Yeah. Hopefully, mainstream media also finding some voice I've been waiting for that moment for many years now. They hadn't till last evening. I didn't see much evidence of that, but I'm hoping. And hopefully the judiciary also begins to read the letter and spirit of the Constitution, which has been somewhat blurred in their view for the last few years. If these things improve, one can only feel positive. And above all, if a contestation on ground, contestation by movement, civil society, these things grow, then this can only be a positive thing. So in that sense, my overall view as of today is that it's positive. However, there is a possibility of a confrontational approach, which can suddenly make it more active. We should be open to that possibility.
Right. So two quick questions, two more quick questions. So the one, many people on the, let's put it, on the left liberal, anti-government, or however you want to describe it, we were writing obituaries of Indian democracy for a while. I mean, there were many of them we were editing them there. Or even in the West, just from now a theoretical perspective, there's this notion that that you can do election interference through ads, through campaigns, through social media, through an algorithmic world. And in America, they'll say Russian interference in polls, the big thing that's been racial. The fact that, like you said, the answer to the first question, that despite these huge material constraints now, just physical constraints sometimes, money, exposure to media between power and not power, and various interests involved in that. That despite that, you can have the kinds of mandate and that the people's voice in many ways can be heard. Do you think that also shows a resilience of Indian democracy, and even to an extent its institutions, if only through the voter and nothing else?
Indeed, it does. There are two or three very big positive takeaways. Number one, there were serious suspicions about the EVM. As you probably know, for the last 10 years, I have personally carried out a campaign against EVM conspiracy theories. And I've told my friends, don't believe this stuff, etc. But to tell you absolutely honestly, in those 48 hours after the exit polls and before counting, I wasn't entirely sure. Not because I believed the exit polls, but because I had begun to worry whether exit polls were a smokescreen for some hera-fairy that may have taken place. I'm very happy to see that my apprehensions were wrong. And in that sense, although the electoral process was not, the integrity of electoral process is not established because of the shameful conduct of the Election Commission, but the counting and polling process integrity has been established. And that's such a good news for our democracy. Number two, the fact that BJP has got votes in South India is actually very good news for politics, because the temptation for North-South divide and temptation to play up use delimitation in order to put South versus North, that temptation would be reduced. That is indeed a very good news for democracy. And third, because I'm one of those people who had actually started taking a very dim view of Indian democracy and had started wondering whether the days of parliamentary opposition politics are now numbered, and whether we would have to go to politics of resistance of a very, very different kind. This is actually such a lovely lesson for people like me that Indian democracy has deeper roots. These are things I used to say 15 years ago, and I had begun to doubt myself. But when I traveled, and ordinary people were talking about तानाशाही, ये नहीं होना चाहिए, ये तो जोर जबरदस्ती है, ये तो गलत है. BJP voters saying, नहीं, opposition strong तो होना चाहिए साहब देश में, रोटी तो पलटनी चाहिए. The democratic sentiment for last 70 years, and that's why we are not Russia. You see, I had, some of us had started comparing, and occasionally I could see glimpses of what Putin was doing in India. But the big difference is that Russia did not have democracy instituted for a substantial period of time. India, we have. So last 3 generations of people who have been in open democratic situation has brought us to a point there where democracy is more deeply rooted than some of us had started fearing. And that, to me, is one of the best things to have come out of this election. in the last instance, public head, subject head, and this theoretical entity called the people actually exists.
The final questions I must ask about the opposition alliance. India, it is their moment. There were struggles, there was hiccups in the run-up, as there bound to be, with so many political actors trying to come together. Now, sir, next steps, what do you think? Because you have state elections coming up, maintaining a cohesive front when you're in opposition, presumably, given, I mean, of course, the negotiations are still going on within the NDA, but in case the NDA does form the government in the first instance. How do you see what should their aim be? Should it be state elections deepening federalism, which is a good this thing, trying to maybe take a shot at a midterm parliamentary thing, given that alliances can be unstable? What should say the alliance's next steps? They've gotten since Mr. Gandhi after his yatras, clearly they worked something many in the media miss for his own image, for his own reputation now as a formidable politician. And again, and Mr. Akhilesh Yadav as well. So how do you see that going forward now for say the next 6 months or so?
The opposition performance, given the context that I have described, it's a good performance. It could have been better. I must say that after the formation of India coalition, they could have come to seat adjustments much earlier than they did. They could have ideally come up with some 4 or 5 point agenda for the country, which they could have publicized. All these things led to some underachievement. I do sense that even in this very difficult situation, the opposition could have raised its performance to reach closer to 260 or 270, and we would have been looking at a very, very different scenario. Right. Going forward, there are 2 or 3 things to be done. First is the electoral challenge of holding Maharashtra, Jharkhand, and Haryana. All 3 states point to the possibility of regime change. Doing that would be the very first challenge. A higher order challenge is to hold India coalition together properly. Because I think the regime would try to bolster itself up by getting some 15 or 20 to switch. So that's the second challenge that this alliance faces. But to my mind, the deepest challenge is to find a clear agenda, is to align this coalition with the social base of the bottom of the pyramid, because BJP is clearly a party of the top of the pyramid of this country. The opposition has no choice and has this great opportunity of becoming a party of the bottom of the pyramid. In order to do so, the opposition has to come up with clear agenda. Opposition has to put its point of view in the parliament, but it has to go beyond the parliament. Something on the ground needs to be done. That works more than anything else. That is what the opposition needs to do. And if they do, I dare say, for a party like Congress, for example, the effort required to travel from 50 to 100. With the same effort, you can go from 100 to 250. That's waiting to be done. There is a lot that the opposition needs to be done. This is certainly no ground for complacency. And if the opposition does that, we can look at not merely a regime change. We can also look at a paradigm shift in our politics.
Well, sir, I hope they're listening, and the government too. And thank you so much for speaking to us. Keep writing for us. We'll keep talking to you. Thank you so much.